Foreign aid, the great savior for Africa, or is it? Let us find out. Billions of dollars flood the continent every year, and these promise a bright future. Yet, why does Africa still suffocate in poverty? Why does corruption run deeper than ever? The truth is chilling. Foreign aid might not be the solution, but is it? Instead, it might be the problem. Welcome to the fascinating story of why Africa still remains poor instead of receiving over $8 billion per year from USAID alone. This story is also about how corrupt African politicians, and also the story is about the global banks and how they are equally responsible for Africa's poverty trap. But most importantly, the story is about how African local economies are intentionally being kept poor. But ensure to hit the like and subscribe button as I take you through the insane story surrounding the truth about foreign aid, like the likes of USAID. But for starters, let us understand the scale of foreign aid that is currently being received by Africa. The United States Agency for International Development, the so-called USAID, has spent over $8 billion annually across Africa. To put this into comparison, that's more than the GDP of small nations combined.
These are all substantial for countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, which receives about $1.34 billion each year. Ethiopia, which gets about $1.2 billion. Sudan, nearly $800 million. And other major grants going to Nigeria, to South Sudan, Kenya, Mozambique, Uganda, and more.
But here is the kicker. After decades of help, many African nations are still trapped in poverty. And so, something isn't adding up. Take an example of Malawi. USAID has funneled over $150 million per year into that country alone. That money is meant for schools, hospitals, and agriculture. But look around. Why do people still struggle to find clean water? Why do children still struggle to study under trees? And where has all this money gone? This is where things begin to get interesting. The ugly truth is that much of this aid never reaches the people who need it. In fact, in 2013, the infamous Cashgate scandal in Malawi uncovered that millions in aid were stolen, and they all vanished into air. Government officials pocketed money meant for the sick and the hungry, and this is not an isolated case. Instead, it's a pattern that has turned into a system surrounding all the foreign aid that is being received by Malawi. But let's first uncover the dark side of the story. Here, things begin to get worse. Free food, free clothes, free resources, they all seem like a good thing, right? Wrong. These gifts instead destroy local businesses. Imagine you're a farmer in Malawi. You work hard, but then free maize from foreign donors flood into the market. Your crops, instead, they become worthless. Then your small business will collapse, and suddenly you and your family are dependent on aid indefinitely. Right? This doesn't look like a good story at all. But let us first understand, could there be alternative approaches to this kind of help? For example, while the Western aid fosters dependency, others may choose to take a different approach. For instance, China invests instead of giving out handouts. China builds roads, China builds railways, power plants, and ends up creating job opportunities, not dependency. Which approach do you think truly helps Africa? Let me know in the comment section. Let's borrow a quote from one of the African economists. Africa does not need charity. Instead, it needs fair trade and investment. Yes, that is one of the brightest quotes from this African economist. Further, renowned African economists argue that real progress comes from trade, not endless aid. As the saying goes, give a man a fish and he eats for a day. Teach him to fish and he eats for a lifetime. But foreign aid, does it teach? No, instead it just gives, and giving forever creates dependency. And dependency is not independence at all. So So what is the solution instead? Africa doesn't need pity at all. Instead, Africa needs opportunities, investments, fair trade, and innovation. If the world truly wants to help, it must stop treating Africa as a charity case and instead it starts treating Africa as a business partner.
Take inventory of what you have in your country, use it and use it wisely. No more begging. You don't need to have anybody filling the gaps in your educational system. You don't need anybody filling the gaps in your healthcare system. You don't need anybody creating initiatives in the most remote parts of your country because they claim that you, the government, cannot have access to that. How can somebody come from all the way from the United States, all the way from Britain, and access the most remote part of your country that you in your country cannot access? It is the most stupid thing.
Therefore, after giving you all these insights, now it's your turn to judge. Is foreign aid a blessing to Africa or instead it's a curse? Now it's up to you to decide, but let us know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you believe Africa deserves better, and if you believe aid needs to be used in a proper manner and a proper way, then share and like this video. Otherwise, we thank you for spending your time onto this video. Until next time, catch you later in the next video. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe for more.